So John, hello.
Yes, let's
Thanks
do
so
this.
much for being here, for chatting with me. For those who kind of don't, already, for those who have not opened the internet in a few years, I'm just going to read your bio.
Sure.
So I don't know, you can, chew your fingernails or something.
Yeah.
John is the New York Times bestselling author of 5 books, including his most recent Do-Over, Rescue Monday, Reinvent Your Work and Never Get Stuck. For 18 years, he's helped some of the biggest brands in the world tell their story, including the Home Depot, Bose, Staples, and the Dave Ramsey team. Most recently, he's spoken to hundreds of thousands of people across the country at events for companies like Microsoft, Whirlpool, and Comedy Central. Featured regularly on national media, John has been seen on CNN, Fox News, Good Day LA, and many other key outlets. He's also written for Time, the Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, Reader's Digest, and
This is
MSNBC.
such a long bio.
I know,
Gosh.
I know, but it's so important to happen. In addition, John is also a big proponent of social media. The social media with blogs.
I
that
took
have
out
been-
expert. It used to say expert, but then I'm so tired of people saying they're internet gurus or like Periscope expert. No, you're not. It came out in March. Okay, go on.
His blogs have been read by 4 million people, and he's got more than 275,000 Twitter followers. In 2010, he used his influence with his tribe to build 2 kindergartens in Vietnam. That's my favorite country. And John lives with his awesome wife, Jenny, and their 2 awesome daughters in Franklin, Tennessee. Woo! And you live in Franklin just because everyone else lives in Franklin, correct?
I was here before some people, but not before all people.
Okay.
That's the
Okay.
most kung fu thing I'll probably say during this interview. But yeah, so we've been here 6 years. But yeah, everybody that like it feels like the internet has moved here.
Yeah.
Although you're one to talk about moving to places.
That's true.
You've kind of done the opposite of Tennessee.
I have. I've moved far, far away from Tennessee.
Yep.
So I want to talk to you about this idea of purpose to start. And I think it's interesting because I think there is this whole movement to find your purpose, find your purpose, find your purpose. And it seems like you kind of don't like that. So you say in Start, you say that you're not a fan of finding your purpose, you're a fan of living with purpose. And I'd love to kind of hear what you mean by that.
Yeah, I guess for me, I feel like we often use that as an excuse to not do anything. I meet a lot of people that go, as soon as I know my purpose, like as soon as I found my calling or my, vision quest or whatever word they're using to indicate single thing that will answer all questions in their lives, then they'll get started. So I feel like we've swung so far from like in the 60s or our belief in the 50s and 60s of like, it's just a job. I don't have to, like, I go and I punch a clock and then I get a Dodge. And we've swung all the way over to like, no, everything I do should fulfill my heart and my purpose. And so I've kind of pushed back to a middle of, I would love for you to figure out something you care about. But I don't believe in the way we talk about purpose, we often talk about it like a soulmate, where there's that one person you're supposed to marry. And I just don't think that's true. And for me, I look at it and go, it's going to change over time. It's going to be different. At 40, the things that I thought were my purpose at 30 have evolved and they're different. And like in college, I see that manifested where college students feel like I've got to find my major, like my perfect major, my purpose. And the idea that you'd ask an 18-year-old to pick something they're going to do for the next 40 years is hysterical. Like your brain's not even finished forming until you're 25. And so I told my little sister, Molly, who's 15 years younger, Molly, I couldn't have done my purpose that I do now, which is largely social media, when I was in college, because it didn't exist. Like I couldn't have majored in Twitter or email even because they didn't exist. So the idea that somebody will go, today I need my purpose. So that's why I like the idea of, if you've got a day job, and I don't even like that phrase. I wish I hadn't used it on the cover of Quitter because it denigrates your work before you enter the building. I think you should do that with everything you have. I'm much more a bigger fan of going, this is where I am right now, and I'm going to live fully in this. And I might find something I love doing more than this, but I'm going to live with purpose right now. I don't have to wait for that someday.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I'm wondering, I mean, you've done all this kind of different stuff in the last 18 years, or maybe you think it's stuff with the same thread, but certainly on the outside it seems pretty different.
Sure.
Working with big brands as an employee, then working for Dave, then writing best-selling books and speaking, and also kind of working for brands, maybe consulting stuff. in all those different steps of your life, were you always living with purpose or not at all?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm learning things at 40 that I thought I knew to be true that aren't true, and vice versa. It's not like you become like, I don't want to talk about 40 like it's 90 and that people should interview me on a porch in a rocking chair, because that's as ridiculous as the 22-year-old life coach. If you're 22, don't be a life coach. That's stupid. What are you teaching me about high school? So I don't think that 40 is super old, but I do know different things now than I thought I used to know. So I can look back and go, okay, here's kind of an evolution. I put a line in start that if I could, I would strike it out 1,000 times over. And the line was, lucky is a word people who are lazy use to describe those who are hustling. And it's such an Axe body spray line. Like, people tweet it all the time, and it's so false. It's not even a little true. Because now at this age, and it's only a couple years later, I get that there is an element. Fine, don't call it luck, call it coincidence, call it, I don't control everything. Like, I really don't. Just like I didn't control an employee at Dave Ramsey reading my blog and going, this guy is funny, we should have him come speak. I didn't make that happen. And so I think the older I get, the more I reflect back on things and go, oh, I was wrong in this thinking, or I was lazy in this thinking. But the big thing that I'm working on my next book right now, and I had a business coach that I talked to the other day. And I called her up and said, hey, I need some Facebook advice, because she's a genius at Facebook. And she said, well, you are what I call accidentally successful, Jon. Ooh. And I was like, oh. Ooh. And she said, I've studied everything you've done, and I can't discern a single strategy or goal. And she said, I know you know what these words mean because I've heard you use them in speeches. You're just not doing them in your own life. And she was right. And so if anything, now I'm going, charisma has an expiration date. And I can kind of, the book starts with accidentally successful. Like, it's and so now no. So if your question is, have I lived with purpose this whole time? No, I mourn that I didn't understand where I was going at 23 like I do now. Now, I think that would have been impossible to have 100% idea of what I was going to do. Sure. But I could have been more disciplined. I could have been more focused. I could have been more open to getting wisdom from smart people around me. I was pretty sure I knew exactly what I was doing at 23, and I really didn't.
Yeah. So, I've said for years, I mean, you've written 2 books since Quitter, but Quitter has always been just one of my favorite books. I just love Quitter. And I'm curious, kind of, you're talking about looking back on things you've done 5 years ago and seeing them as different now. And I don't know, there's this kind of quote in Quitter that I want to read you, and then I want to hear if you think that this is something that works at different stages of life, or if it only happens once. And it's basically this idea of figuring out your dream. So you say, more often than not, finding out what you love doing most is about recovering an old love or an inescapable truth that has been silenced for years, even decades. When you come to your dream job, your thing, it is rarely a first encounter. It's usually a reunion. So, I mean, when you're writing that when you wrote that in Quitter, I think your dream job at the time was you were then at Dave Ramsey, and that was your dream job. Now, obviously, you do other stuff now. So, what do we just have different dream jobs at different stages, or how does that?
No, I mean, I guess I guess it's really about the core of who you are. I still believe in that idea because I see a lot of people who the first thing I have to do is give them even permission to ask the question, what do I want to do? And especially like a lot of young moms, for instance, feel shame even going, wait, I can work on me? That's not selfish. That's not greedy. That's not negligent to my children. Like there's a lot of people that if you say to them, hey, what's your dream? They feel so uncomfortable and so ashamed and have so buried it under obligation or things they should do but really don't want to do. So I still believe the idea that there's a dream for you to get back in touch with, and that often it's like finding an old friend or going, wait a second, you mean it's okay that I do that? Like, you mean it's okay that I get to express myself that way? So for me, I'd look back, especially in Quitter, and go, what was the thread? The thing I loved most in Quitter was telling honest, funny stories that were relatable. Like the way I like to write is I like to say, hey, I'm still in the trenches. I'm still making mistakes, and here's stuff I'm learning. And I felt like I was able to do that in Quitter more than I did in Start. In Start, I think I got a little full of myself and wrote some ideas that weren't as in touch and relatable as Quitter. And so I still feel like now I'm doing that even more so, like have connected with the Quitter voice of going, okay, here's this thing I'm trying to get better at. Wow, I'm not good at these 5 things. And because I'm charismatic, I can pretend I am, but the truth is I'm not. So I better really dig in deep and figure out how to do this and take the audience along with me on the way. But I don't think my switch hasn't been so large. Like I very rarely meet somebody where they go, I either want to be a marine biologist or like a spoken word poet. Like it's one, I'm going to do like 8 years of schooling about fish or no schooling and a microphone. Like rarely are they that big. There's usually some sort of common thread that if you pull it through, you can go, this is related to this, is related to this. So I still feel like now, you know, when I worked for Dave, I was doing a lot to kind of help with their story and work on their team. And now that I work for myself, I'm going, okay, when I go to a big company, when I talk to Nissan or Comedy Central, whoever, it's still a big company I'm helping with their team. Like people don't realize Dave's company is like 600 people. It's a massive corporation. I think sometimes people think it's like it's him and a radio station. Like it's a huge company. So I still feel connected to that idea of telling funny, relatable stories in different ways.
So do you, it sounds like, I mean, because in Do Over, you talk about this idea about how you like being a beginner. But I actually think that's hard to admit, and it's definitely not something people say kind of at the beginning of their career. So maybe this sort of resonates with what you're saying, is sort of now going back to that quitter voice, or kind of, I don't know, being a beginner again in a sense.
I guess for me, it's just this continual process of being honest. The older I get, the more I realize there's really 2 categories. There's things I can tweak and get better at and fix or whatever, and things that are just, that's who I am. And I have 40 years of evidence, and I need to accept that and live within that. Like, I know my favorite thing is to create ideas. I'm terrible at measuring them. Like, we live in a culture that I could do better if I knew, okay, when I create this type of idea and I can measure it and then I can tweak it and I can do it again in a different way and I can spread it across the internet. There's a lot of those skills that I just don't have. So I could sit here and go, Claire, I just have to get, like, I need to be a better project manager. I will never be an amazingly natural project manager. That's not what I was born to do. Like, I think I'm working on a blog post about, is talent natural? Like, what matters more, talent or hard work? Because a friend posted that the other day, that, like, successful people aren't gifted. They just will themselves to success with hard work. And I think that's not true. I think it's a mix of the 2 things. And anytime you have more than one kid, or even just one kid, you go, wow, they came to the planet with something we didn't give them.
Right.
Like my one kid, like I have a daughter who taught herself how to read at 4. And we were like, we're so smart. Like we are such smart parents. And then when the other daughter didn't do that, we thought, oh, wait a second. There's a chance she was wired for that. And so I think that's kind of, for me, it's figuring out this is the thing I'm wired for and I'm going to live out of it, the weaknesses and the strengths, versus going, I've got to beat these weaknesses out of myself so that I can become what the internet needs right now. And man, that's miserable.
Yeah. So, okay, so I was reading a book recently, and I feel like I shouldn't say the title because it'll like throw the book under the bus. But the guy said in the book that the writer, maybe it was a man, maybe it was a woman, we don't know.
Yeah.
Said that he can't remember the last time that he did something he didn't want to do, in reference to like his work and his career, right? And okay, so
sorry, keep going.
I'm sensing.
This is rich.
I'm sensing what your response is going to lean towards. But now that you do, now that you think you're doing what you want to do, and you have the job you want to do, you work for yourself, you do stuff that you're not trying to make yourself be a project manager. You're trying to work from your strengths. I mean, do you still do stuff you don't like doing, Jon?
I love that I don't know, like. I read also a quote on Instagram from another author, a successful person, that said, if you don't love 90% of the things it takes to be in your industry, you're in the wrong industry. And I thought that is garbage. Because here's what that translates to, Claire. That translates to, in a 40-hour work week, you're only doing 4 hours a week where you're not in love. Mm-hmm. Like most people have longer than 4 hours of commute each week. Like everyone I've ever met has had to pay taxes or do invoicing. Right. And so right now for me, I know I'm not a great project manager, but I don't have the scale yet to be able to afford to hire a person that is. So I have to do a lot of that. And it's painful and it's awkward and it feels like wearing my dad's coat at the 8th grade dance. Like it doesn't fit, but I have to do it in order to do the other things I love. And like the story I always think about, so I had a book signing in Austin, Texas at like 7 p.m. one night. Get to the airport at 8 a.m. for my flight and they go, it's canceled. The tower is flooded. Like how the tower, the tallest building, floods is beyond me. But so they go, your next flight will be at 6 p.m. and I'd missed the book signing. So they finally said, we can get you to Dallas, but you're going to have to drive 220 miles across like the middle of nowhere, Texas to get to Austin. So I go, I get a rental car, like it's the last second. So it's just the worst rental car. And I drove 220 miles I wasn't expecting. At no point during that day I was like, this is a dream. This is amazing. Like, dream. Whoa. Like the 1 hour book signing and interacting with people was a lot of fun. The 24 hours it took me to get there, if I use my scale of I only do things I want to do, like what a failure of a day. I don't know. And I know if I got to that place, it would end up poorly. If I got my life where I only do things I want to do, that would not be good for my heart and it wouldn't be good for my family. I'm not a very kind guy if I don't have to do anything. Like Bono, the story with Bono is always when he goes on tour, he has to take, after the tour ends, he takes 2 weeks off and lives in a hotel by himself to shake off the rock star. Because for 6 months, he's been catered every need to. And he can't go home like that because he's going to get a divorce when his wife says, hey, take out the garbage, Paul. And he goes, I'm Bono. Where's my helicopter? So he needs a 2-week break between this is me on the road where every need is met, and this is me being a dad and a husband and a normal human that does normal human things. So I am 1,000% against the idea that there's some life you get to where you only do things you really want to. Like, that's not true. Seth Godin, who's wildly successful, doesn't like to fly. His speaker fee is more for the West Coast because he hates to fly. So if you said to him, Seth, do you think someday you'll be successful enough where you don't have to do things you don't want to do? He could easily go, well, I have to fly 5 hours from New York to LA for this speaking gig, and I really want to do the speaking gig, and the only way to do it is for me to take this flight, so I guess I have to do it. So yeah, I think that, I hate that logic, because what happens is young people read it and go, there's jobs where I should only do my joy, and the second they do something that's awkward or uncomfortable, which is in every job and every endeavor, they go, this must be the wrong one. And they jump to the next one and the next one and the next one, or they get frustrated. They feel like they failed. So, yeah, I don't know anybody who has a job that they only do. They can't remember the last time they didn't do something they didn't want. That's ridiculous.
Do you think, okay, so aside from it being ridiculous, though, do you think that you have been able to, as you've gotten more clarity on what you're good at and that you're not good on being a project manager, have you been able to successfully sort of winnow down and do more of what you're good at? And
100%. So it's on me to go, okay, I write best in the morning. So if I know that, if I have that self-awareness, then I need to protect my mornings. And so from 7:30, after I take my kids to school, to 11:30, I need to be holed up in a coffee shop, not doing meetings. If I know that like I can only do 3 or 4 hours of writing or that kind of level of thought a day, like I'd love to say I'll do 8 hours a day, 22 days a month. But I know in the afternoon I'm pretty tapped if I've done that. So then I can do meetings, then I can do other things and book it in the. So yeah, I think you're always trying to learn your strengths and live out of them, and then hire around or manage your weaknesses. So yeah, I think there's always things that are part of, like, anything you do will have a cost that's not fun to pay. Anything you want to get better at, any joy you have, and part of it is the struggle is part of what makes it such a joy to succeed in it. I would never want a job that it was just like I'd get bored. I would get really bored if I figured out how to do it and just repeated it. I like the challenge because it makes the joy so much bigger. So that, yeah, I would definitely say I'm trying to always do better at what I'm good at, but not with the expectation that someday I won't have to do things I don't like to do. Because even if I scale to a big company, and I said to you, Claire, I hate managing people.
Right.
Well, I still work with people. Like on some level, like even if I only have 2 direct reports that manage 20 people below me, I still have to manage those 2.
Right.
So I just think that that's a really dangerous logic because I think it sets and it's what's really popular in our culture right now. And if I could change, I love the subtitle of Quitter because it's closing the gap between your day job and your dream job. But again, day job denigrates, like, call it the pain every bill I have job, and then dream job sets up the idea of perfect job. So I think it's a dangerous phrase.
I think, don't you say this in Quitter at some point that, or it's in one of your books, this idea that it's easy to kind of like get mad at bosses or like not want to do what they tell you to do. And then it's like, well, wait, but they're paying me. I'm the employee. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. Whenever somebody said to me, like, how dare my boss move my lunchtime? Like my lunch, like, who are they? And I wanted to say, well, they're 100% of the people that can, because they're paying 100% of your check. And so, like, I think you have to honor that, but at the same time, use that as fuel. Like, if you've had a bad boss for 5 years in a row, well, and you haven't applied to other jobs, just admit, I like having a bad boss. I accept a bad boss. Like, if they move your lunch break, use that lunch break to hustle on figuring out something else or figure out a better relationship with them. And so, yeah, I don't know. I was talking to myself in that because there were times I had jobs and I was so entitled. Like, how come they're not letting me write the funny things I want to write? Because they hired you to write about Bose speakers. Right. Like in the job description, it didn't say, and your witty thoughts on life and culture. Right. Like if it did, you definitely have an argument. If it didn't, which it didn't, then please shut up.
Okay, so if I were, just at the beginning of my career and I was, or not even at the beginning of my career, but at a place where I thought I wasn't doing exactly what I was supposed to be doing and I wanted to know sort of how I could kind of recalibrate, what do you think, the Jon of today, what would you tell me to sort of do to start figuring out, hey, the job I'm in, the cubicle I'm in, it's cool, it's paying my bills or whatever, but it's not really, it doesn't feel like I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing, and it's not really it's not probably going to fuel my passion for the next 30 years or whatever.
Well, the first thing I'd say, I always say, what's your team say? And by team, I mean the people around you that know you and love you and can tell you the truth. I think sometimes we get stuck and we can't really see what's going on. So I think it's really valuable for you to say to a friend over coffee, hey, here's how I'm feeling about my job. Here's where I think I am. What am I not seeing? What am I wrong about? And they might go, hey, no offense, this is your pattern. Every job you've ever had, at month 6, you go, this place doesn't get me. So I'd love to invite you to break the pattern. And I love you as a friend. And so, here's what you're really doing. Or they might go, we've been waiting for you to see this. Like, you've been there 3 years and you're capable of so much. And I really, you asked me for advice. Here's my advice. Take a class, lean into this one thing. This thing you do on the weekends just for fun, there's something more there. You should go explore that. So 1 is talk to your friends. And then 2, feed that question your most valuable resource, which is time. When somebody tells me I don't like my job, and then I go, well, what did your team say? And what are you doing about it? If they're not doing anything about it other than complaining, which is like a hobby we all love, then I know you're not really ready to change something. But if you say to me, okay, I took this personality test. I'm trying to figure out what I'm all about. I did an exercise, there's an exercise in Do-Over about skills, taking note cards and doing a skill per note card using this set of questions to figure out what am I really good at? How am I marketable? And if you won't do the exercises, you're not that invested, so the rest isn't going to matter. So I would say, is the frustration at a point where you're ready to actually take some action? And if it's not, then maybe you need to think about something else. And then the other thing, I think the other thing is give yourself patience and for it to take a little bit. It's not going to happen over a weekend, and it shouldn't. I think there's times where people are at good companies but have a bad attitude. And often the attitude change, I've had so many people email me and go, with the book Quitter, people would say, I was so excited to read your book because I thought it would say, quit your job is dumb, get out of here. And the first chapter is don't quit your job. And they were like, I hated it, but I realized I worked for a Fortune 500 company and there were other departments I could work at. We have this expectation of like blowing up the building and being like, I'm out of here. So I think there's a lot of different things, but talk to friends, invest in it with time, and make sure that you're really seeing the full picture.
I love it. I love it. I feel like I learned a lot.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't know. Can you just in closing just tell folks what you're working on now and where people can find you?
Yeah, my latest book is called Do Over. It's available everywhere right now.
And it's sitting behind you on the shelf.
Yeah, it's all I have them all, but there's other ones for sale where you live. I don't mail it out of my house. Like Jenny said, if we ever have to mail stuff out of our garage, we're getting a divorce. Like I will never sell a physical product out of my house, because the day we're labeling stuff, like for like $1 a thing, like forget it. Yes. Like that is, I will not make that mistake. So yeah, and then the thing I'm excited about is 30 Days of Hustle. If you go to 30daysofhustle.com, depending on when you watch this, you can either sign up or you can get on the wait list. And we've taken 15,000 people through it, and they've lost weight and decluttered. And it's a 30-day video course that's similar to all the words I said today. So I'm excited about that. And then Twitter, you can find me at Jon Acuff, JONACUFF. Then my website's acuff.me.
Thank you, Jon. This is so great. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks, Claire.